And Jonathan Sacerdoti, I got wrong. Jonathan, good morning. You can't. I know I can't do it. How are you, mate?
Good morning. That's all right. It's all right. It's Sacerdoti.
Whatever it is, you and I know you so well.
I answer to all variations. It doesn't bother me.
I love having you on, and you know exactly where I come from on this. I've talked repeatedly about any form of racism is abhorrent, but the fact that the Jewish community and anti-Semitism doesn't even seem to get a looking compared to other things is, in my mind, a disgrace. And another example, my friend this morning with the BBC.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the BBC is a great idea, but I think it's a massive failure in all the places where it counts. And what do I mean by that? It's got this lack of commercial pressure that other broadcasters have to struggle with. So it doesn't have to compete for advertisers for its money. It's given this money. It's basically a poll tax. Anyone that owns a television or watches the iPlayer has to pay it under the threat of criminal prosecution. And so it doesn't need to do things that bow down to the angry mob, to the woke crowd that take to the streets, whether they're the Free Palestine Brigade or whether they're the anti-Trump, the Trump derangement syndrome people. The BBC actually has this kind of independent financial backing that means it could actually just tell the truth. So that's why it's enormously disappointing when we find out it's been doing this warped coverage of Donald Trump, it's been doing this warped coverage of Israel, and this leaked report shows that they knew about it internally all this time. None of this, of course, is news to me. As you know, you and I have talked about this before. I've been covering this for years. I mean, back in 2021, I wrote a big report where I'd investigated BBC Arabic failings, which is now one of the headline failings that this report has highlighted. And I know the BBC knew about it because I went to them every single time as a responsible journalist and put to them all the findings that I had. I worked with an organisation called Camera Arabic, which forensically goes through what they do. And every single time, the response is the same. It's, no, you're wrong. Then when you really push them, they go, you're right, but it's not a systemic problem. And then they correct it really quietly, very long after the event. And really the only people who would get the corrected version of the news are those who have the weird fetish of reading the BBC's corrections page buried away somewhere on their website. So that's not really a news service. That's a propaganda service that is deliberately, if you ask me, in my opinion, constantly covering its tracks, but constantly putting forward a hard leftist agitprop version of the news, whether it's being pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, anti-Trump, anti-Brexit, whatever it is, the BBC always has its own agenda.
And isn't that frightening when you think about it? I mean, we get so well put, so eloquent, but state broadcaster, unbiased, straight down the line, unbiased broadcaster absolutely fundamentally doesn't fulfil that criteria. We all know Bob Villan at Glastonbury. Tim Davie was there for 5 hours. Death to the IDF, blatant anti-Semitism, played for 5 hours on, streamed, I think, or played on iPlayer or whatever. Disgusting. The man survives. A refusal to call Hamas terrorists. The man survives. Yesterday's example, doctoring a speech of Trump's that was 52 minutes apart to push an agenda, as you quite rightly say. What needs to be done, Jonathan? Because I don't see governments taking the BBC. I always believe very quickly that it's almost as if people believe that, or people in power think that the BBC is on some pedestal like the NHS and you can't dare criticise something, but it is flawed, isn't it, my friend? Flawed.
Well, it really shouldn't be, and I think more and more people actually are laughing at it. I think, it's in a column I wrote, I actually said it's a bit like Meghan and Harry. It thinks it's still this sort of great British establishment, royalty in their case, this esteemed broadcasting corporation, but in actual fact, it's a laughingstock around the world, and people are constantly agog at the way it's embarrassing itself with thing after thing like this. I mean, the Hamas documentary, they paid a Hamas minister's family so that they could have his son present a documentary on the BBC. And you mentioned the Trump thing with the footage. That's not the first time they did it. They did it in that Hamas propaganda documentary. Yeah. I covered that they actually took footage of another child, not that one, a little kid called Zakaria, who they said was a paramedic. It was a child. And they showed this section under a caption which indicated it was all filmed on one day. It clearly wasn't. His hair length changed 2 or 3 times. His shoes changed. They did try to mislead us by making his T-shirt and couldn't other clothes stay the same? And so they made up this narrative, which wasn't continuous, as they seem to suggest in the documentary. And in their own report on that, they acknowledged that this had happened and then said there was no attempt to deceive, that it was all on one day. They did it before that, years ago, if you remember, with that documentary about Her Late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. They made this trailer where they showed her storming out of a photo shoot with the photographer Annie Leibovitz having a tantrum.
It cost Peter Fincham his job, didn't it? I remember that.
Exactly. It's not enough to cost people their jobs. I think, I'm really sorry to say it, I don't want to sound extreme here. The thing's had its day. It was a nice idea, but these days we don't need it. Everything it does is offered elsewhere commercially, and that's great. It means that it's done its job, unless they can absolutely tip it upside down, you know, shake it out till all the activists and the hard leftists and the anti-Semites and the anti-Israel activists and the anti-Trump people just fall out. They can staff it again with honest reporters. There are loads of them. I could give them the numbers of some good people. And then they could start to make news, which, you know what, probably won't rate as well, because there may be mobs that try to boycott it and stop people watching it. But actually, I think most people would find it so refreshing to have a news channel that presents things really honestly as they are, and documentaries and all sorts of other programming, and can show things as they are, but without having to be all whistles and bells and glamour and Strictly Come Dancing and all that stuff, because they don't need to do that. We've got that elsewhere. They need to do the stuff that isn't commercially viable, but is absolutely accurate and truthful and responsible. But I don't see anyone, not a single person at the BBC, who stands up for that. And that's why I think they should just shut it down, personally.
Brilliant. Honestly, you're as erudite as the best of them. I really appreciate it. Jonathan Sacerdoti. Brilliant. Honestly, brilliant writer and broadcaster. We so appreciate him being on the show. It's